Yesterday, I did the unthinkable. I actually made it through an entire video without breaking off into an angry rant, not even once. Are you proud of me? I'm proud of me. The overwhelming positivity made sense because I was talking about 5 things that really impressed me the most this year. Obviously, none of them were perfect, but they were truly the cream of the crop. Today, however, I feel compelled to crash that positivity bus straight into a brick wall. Why, you ask? Well, because today, I have the displeasure of talking about the 5 things that drove me up a flippin' wall in 2017 right before the bus crashes into it. Today, I'll be looking at some of the most pointless, underwhelming, stupid, and just plain terrible things that came out of 2017's bumhole. My first entry shouldn't be all that surprising to anyone who's been following this channel for more than a few days. Out of all of the disappointing graphics cards that I've played around with this year, 2 stand out like sore thumbs as the absolute worst of the worst. These were some of the most anticipated cards ever, and when they launched many months after their direct competition, they could barely keep up. That's right, it's Vega. How could it be anything other than Vega? After the massive success that AMD's Ryzen CPUs have proven to be, I don't blame anyone who expected Vega to roll in and dropkick NVIDIA's high-end cards right off their entitled little thrones. Unfortunately, even with a few extra months in the oven, Vega came out half-baked. While Vega 56 and 64 both perform better than the GTX 1070 in a ton of games, and even better than the 1080 in a handful of DX12 games, the overall winner still goes to Team Green. The Vega cards are a continuation of AMD's focus on making powerful compute beasts rather than killer gaming cards. I mean, you only need to look at Vega's impressive mining performance to see that their focus is split into more than one avenue. But the thing is, most games still don't take advantage of this kind of performance offered by Vega. And until developers really make an effort to do just that, NVIDIA will continue to dominate the high-end GPU gaming market. But hey, disappointment aside, the RX Vega cards are still okay gaming cards in their own right. So then, why are they on this list? Other than the stuff I just discussed, obviously, well, pricing and availability for one. The pricing on these cards was a complete mess when they first launched, and no one really knew what was going on. Vega 56 and 64 were supposed to retail for $399 and $499 respectively, which was a little high for what they are, but not entirely unreasonable. Unfortunately, you couldn't get them at those prices, and you still can't. Partly because they were basically impossible to find in stock anywhere unless you opted to buy them as part of the stupid gamer packs, and even then, it wasn't guaranteed. Of course, a large part of the blame lies squarely on the heads of GPU crypto miners who snatched up as many cards as they could carry, but it's not like AMD wasn't expecting this to happen. Come on, AMD. Now, I know I've probably harped on about this far too often already, but Vega being so sucky is probably why NVIDIA's next-gen Volta cards seem all the much further away. If Vega truly posed a threat to NVIDIA's lineup, chances are they'd feel rushed to get Volta out of the presses real quick. Instead, all they had to do was release the phenomenally stupid GTX 1070 Ti to hammer the final nail in Vega's coffin. And while we're on the topic of fairly pointless GPUs, the RX 500 series cards sure didn't need to exist and get an honorable mention here. The RX 400 range of cards were really good contenders and offered almost the same performance as NVIDIA's mid-range cards while being a fair bit cheaper. RX 500 series just felt like a total reactionary release and super out of place. They didn't offer close to a big enough of a performance jump from the 400 series to justify their own existence, and they just served to saltify all of the people who had already bought into the 400 series cards. Speaking of salt though, Intel Kaby Lake owners must be drowning in it right now because Kaby Lake takes our worst CPU launch of 2017. Back in January when desktop Kaby Lake processors first launched, they didn't do so to too much fanfare. Just another round of i3, i5, and i7 chips with the same core and thread counts as the preceding Skylake chips, only with a slightly bumped up clock speed. Of course, there was more to the chips than just that, but it was Intel being complacent in their domination once again. Then, Ryzen rolled on into town and showed Intel that AMD still has a lot of fight left in it, which is why we got the 8th generation Coffee Lake launch only about 10 months after the release of Kaby Lake. Now, if Coffee Lake followed the trend and stuck with more or less the same core and thread count as Kaby Lake and relied on higher clock speeds, it wouldn't have been a huge deal for Kaby Lake. Instead, Coffee Lake is far superior to Kaby Lake in pretty much every way and is priced just right to cannibalize it entirely. I mean, it had to be in order to really take on Ryzen and its army of cores and threads. But my issue with Kaby Lake isn't that they're bad chips, because they aren't. Since there aren't a whole lot of games and applications that take full advantage of more than 4 cores and favor high clock speeds above all, they're perfect for those applications. My biggest issue is that Intel was clearly capable of adding more cores to their chips at least as far back as Kaby Lake, but decided to stick with it with the adage of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Then Ryzen broke it, and Intel was forced to screw over everyone who could have used those additional cores in their Kaby Lake chips. And just to add insult to injury, Coffee Lake chips only work with the 300 series motherboards, meaning that if you want to upgrade from Kaby Lake to Coffee Lake, you'll have to invest in a new motherboard along with your new CPU. No matter how you look at it, Kaby Lake is just a stupid holdover cash grab that no one cared about, and Intel promptly dumped like an ugly prom date as soon as they got a whiff of some real AMD competition. But hey, we can't talk about cash grabs without including EA, right? EA has made quite a reputation for itself over the years as being, and I'm being generous here, a little greedy. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that. They're a massive company and they need to keep their investors happy and all of that jazz. But this year, they once again earned the ire of their fans everywhere from Star Wars Battlefront 2. Unlike some of the other games they've launched recently, Battlefront 2 was a pretty okay launch. The game was and continues to be pretty fun, even though it doesn't do a whole lot that the first game didn't do already. No, the issue with Battlefront 2 lies in a little something called microtransactions. Microtransactions quickly became one of the most hated buzzwords in the gaming community this year, and unfortunately it's something we all just kind of had to get used to over the years. But the way EA implemented microtransactions into Battlefront 2 was yet another straw that re-broke the camel's back. Now, I personally don't mind it too much when games give me the opportunity to skip some grinding and just buy the things I want, but locking critical multiplayer elements behind a paywall or forcing people to invest in a massive amount of time just to unlocking them, or giving players an advantage for paying, is just kind of a stupid move. But while I'm including Battlefront 2 in this list, primarily on principle, there's another game that was actually the worst game of 2017, in my opinion, and that game is none other than Mass Effect Andromeda. Mass Effect Andromeda was easily one of the most anticipated games of 2017 and probably the most anticipated game for many fans as soon as Mass Effect 3's credits rolled after a decidedly crappy ending. BioWare had about 5 years between the launch of Mass Effect 3 and Mass Effect Andromeda, and yet it was marred at launch by some of the most horrific facial animations I've seen in at least a decade, a myriad of game-breaking and immersion-breaking bugs, a tepid and predictable storyline, nonsensical quest lines, and relatively mediocre companion characters. Even my favorite part about the game, exploring the Andromeda galaxy and discovering new things along the way, got old very quickly. Granted, many of these issues have since been fixed in significant patches, but I still have such a bad taste in my mouth that I can't bring myself to reinstall the game. Oh crap, for a second there I forgot we're a tech channel, so let's get back to hardware, quick. Hardware that has become stupendously expensive over the last few months. And no, I don't mean graphics cards. That's old news. Screw miners and whatever, blah, 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 get over it already. You can live without a GPU. You can't, however, live without this product in the next category. The category, as you may have guessed it, is the most horrifically overpriced piece of tech of 2017, and the winner, or loser, this year goes to RAM. RAM pricing has been rising rapidly throughout the year, and by rapidly I mean I went to buy a stick of RAM about 2 months ago, and 5 minutes after adding it to my cart, the price went up by 200 Rand. Another big wave of price bumps hit recently and were significant enough to make anyone planning a RAM upgrade to think twice. I mean, the 64 gigs of RAM that I have in my editing station costs more than the Threadripper 1950X. That is insane. There are various reasons for the massive increase, but it largely comes down to supply and demand. We're all hungry for more RAM on our desktops, laptops, smartphones, and pretty much any device that doesn't run on Steam, and suppliers are struggling to keep up. I meant Steam like a Steam engine, not Steam the gaming platform. Anyways, unfortunately it doesn't look like demand and in return prices will plateau or go back to normal anytime soon, and there's literally nothing we can do about it. I mean, you could try to buy used sticks, but don't think that the resellers don't know what their crappy old modules are worth right now. And now to enter the final category, the one I've been waiting to rip on the entire time I've been talking about the other categories, the absolute worst company for consumers in 2017. Any guesses? My vote, and the only vote that matters, since this is my list, is friggin' Intel. Yes, my friends, Intel makes the top of my poo list for everything I didn't like about tech this year. They're so bad that they literally get to be listed twice. But Breed, why? You're screeching? Well, let me walk you through it. The year started off with a whimper with the weak sauce upgrade to Kaby Lake from Skylake, 200 megahertz more, but it wasn't all that bad, at least compared to where Intel was yet to take us. Kaby Lake didn't require a new motherboard, and there was nothing about it that screamed stupidity, just incremental lazy lameness. And have we forgotten that Intel chooses to use something akin to toothpaste as their thermal interface material in their processors instead of soldering them? Delitting shouldn't have to be a thing that we need to do to get better performance, Intel. So, besides the boring KB chips, we had the unbelievably infuriating X series launch. So let me walk you through how this went down in case you forgot. It's the night before Computex, and all through Taiwan, the reviewers were writing, and even the mouse. Crap, wait, no, wrong story, sorry. So, night before Computex kicks off, Intel sends out a press release detailing their X series chips. The stupid Kaby Lake X series, as well as the 7800 up to the 10-core i9-7900X. Official Intel information indicating that there's no more than a 10-core CPU planned for $1,000. Okay, that's great. $700 price cut from the previous generation for the deca-core, acceptable. AMD's innovation is getting to them, fair. But then, on the actual announcement day, Intel suddenly reveals the 12-core and up to 18-core i9 series chips, which would be all well and good if it was meant to be a surprise and they were just keeping it hidden, but the fact that they weren't launching until 2 to 3 months after the original set of X series chips indicates that they weren't on the program until Threadripper started breathing down their neck a bit more. They're a rushed afterthought. And then, that's not the only issue with X series. The X299 motherboards were completely ridiculous with them having to support dual and quad channel memory, because if you're running one of the Kaby Lake X chips, you don't get quad channel memory support, half the DIMM slots on the motherboard won't work, and you get no additional PCI Express lanes, not to mention the fact that they included a freaking hardware key for VROC RAID. It's so dumb. High-end desktop apparently just means giant CPU cash grab to Intel. Seriously, the Kaby Lake X chips were really useful to no one besides extreme overclockers. They were just like the normal desktop counterparts, except for a gianter pad with more pins. Nothing that high-end desktop usually provides to the consumer. At least with Threadripper, the 1900X, even though it has the same core count as the Ryzen 7, comes with quad-channel memory support and 64 PCI Express lanes. Come on, Intel, be better. And then, let's not even flip and mention how the VRM design for X299 motherboards wasn't capable of handling a modest overclock and even the lower-end X series. VRM thermal limitations on Intel's high-end desktop? Fantastic stuff. Who would have thought you spent $300 on a motherboard and it overheats? And then, friggin' Coffee Lake. The CPUs are great and perform amazingly, but they completely screw over anyone who purchased Kaby Lake. You would think that you could get more than 10 months as an early adopter or more than 2 months as a normal consumer on Intel's platform, but friggin' nope! They introduced a new socket, removed backwards compatibility from Skylake and Kaby Lake, and it's not even a new architecture, just a different layout of the socket. Presumably, it's because they'll be introducing an 8-core Coffee Lake sometime next year, but even that will require an even further chipset upgrade to Z390. All of this because Intel didn't have a forward-thinking path with regards to competition from AMD. Kaby Lake was their flaccid attempt to keep the malcontents at bay with a regular CPU release, but then when they realized, oh dang, AMD actually matters again, they started scurrying like frantic platypi to produce something that consumers have been banging for ages. Why did it take nearly a decade to get more than 4 cores on consumer desktops, Intel? Why? So yes, our worst company for the consumer of 2017 goes to Intel. There's just no other way of slicing it. At least with EA, they released some functional games that may have sucked, but they've updated them along the way to make them something better. With Intel, we've just continuously got staggered release of bad consumer practices that have no end in sight. Anyways, before this turns into a 20-minute video, I'm going to wrap it up there. That's our top 5 worst things of 2017 that made this year worse than a diet of pure Taco Bell and Red Bull. Be sure to let me know what you thought of our list either down in the comments or over on Twitter. I am at UFDisciple. Which pieces of tech would you have wanted on the list? Were we too harsh with any of the things? Let me know. Also, be sure to smash that like button and get subscribed to stay up to date on our tech-related content. And down in the video description, you'll see a link to enter into our giveaway that's currently going on for this Zotac 1070 Ti. Wootware is giving away this puppy to help us celebrate crossing the 40,000 subscriber mark, even though we're long past that now, so be sure to check that out if you haven't already. Again, link is in the video description. Also, if you're looking to support us here at UFD Tech, you can use our Amazon affiliate code in the description to pick up your tech items. Even if they may be on this list, it'll give us a small kickback that doesn't cost you anything. We also have a Patreon where you can support us monthly and you'll get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes coverage, help determine our upcoming videos, and so much more. So check out this little doodad in the top right-hand corner to check it out, or head on over to patreon.com/UFDTech. Anyways, I'm Brett with the UFD Tech channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.